Welcome everyone, we're here at the Global Earth Repair Conference and we're kicking off the first elemental chat here with Andrew Millison, permaculture designer, permaculture trainer, just an excellent all-around guy, tremendous amount of skill, a lot of respect. So how are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing really, really well.
What do you think so far of the conference?
I feel like they have, Michael Pilarski, Skeeter,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give him credit because I know that he is a joyful, uplifting person.
Yep.
But also understands the seriousness of what we face in the world and the magnitude of what we need to do to repair this crisis. And I feel like he has woven in his joy and countenance as a person along with the depth of the topic matter into this really beautiful blending of heart and mind.
Oh, yeah. And there's still the urgency, but it comes from this place of love and joy rather than fear and angst.
Yeah, it's like we have this intense talk with Charles Eisenstein, and then it melds into like a brass band that leads us out of the auditorium into a dance party. You're just like, yes! I mean, you can't do this if you just stay in the serious heaviness of it.
Yeah.
It's crushing. The weight is crushing. You have to it's kind of like a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
If you don't have the joy, I know a lot of people, I'm just sort of like going off now, but I know a lot of people who are super having a hard time personally with the weight of what's happening in our civilization. And that's absolutely valid.
Yep.
And that could just sink you.
Well, it can be this huge wall to action getting in your way.
Yeah.
And it really comes first from coming to this place and space of love and respect. And if we do that, I think all the earth repair folds in. So along the lines of joy, one of the really amazing parts for the conference for me has been getting to hang out a lot with Rohendra Singh, the Indian waterman. And he is the epitome of joy. He's always bubbly and just such an incredible story that they brought 7 rivers back to life. They brought water back to 250,000 wells. So you were over there in Rajasthan.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I've heard of Rohendra for a long time. He's very well known. And when I heard Rajasthan, when I was going to India, and I was researching Rajasthan, and he was the one who I'd be like, I'd heard of this guy, and I'd heard he restored all these rivers, and I'd gone and looked on Google Earth and found some of his work before, and that was actually one of the main stimulations for me. It was like, I gotta go to Rajasthan. And then when I ran into you briefly, and you go, oh, I have this Indian gentleman I'm hosting, you really should meet him. I'm like, oh, and then the next day, when they introduced Rohendra Singh, I almost fell over. I was like, what? How is he here? Because I went to Rajasthan after the International Permaculture Conference, and I got in touch with a couple really amazing NGOs that I had heard of through Brad Lancaster's Rainwater Harvesting book and through Rico Zook, another permaculture guy. And the scale of hydrologic restoration in Rajasthan, India, the Thar Desert, which is the most densely inhabited desert on the planet, right?
So 9 inches of precipitation.
Depending, lower in some. And it's about the same climate as, say, like Phoenix, Arizona, although hotter, with more rain during a more contracted period.
Window.
So it's like, it's a mind-blowing climate conditions, yet there are 25 million people living in this area. They have an agricultural civilization. Yeah. Like, they're subsistence farmers in these rainfall and climate conditions. Yeah. And so, so hearing Rohendra speak yesterday, and having gone there and documented some of the work of Gravis Jodhpur and the work in Lapuria, the village of Lapuria, and these villages where they have done this work by hand. Yeah. And it was interesting hearing Rohendra talk, and people were like, I don't understand. You're saying that we can't even wrap our minds around hundreds and even thousands of people getting together and women with bowls of soil and lines, and we can't even fathom that many people getting together and excavating like massive, some of the the ponds that I saw that were excavated by hand, like you would look at and be like, I don't know if I could take that on with an excavator. Like, wow, man, that's gonna, I mean.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think that it's this movement of volunteer. There's no government influence here. They haven't taken $1 from the government. They haven't taken one drop of water from the government. It's the people organizing amongst themselves to take direct action to restore their landscape, and they're the ones that immediately are benefited from it too. It just makes so much sense.
Yeah, and the government has been a latter addition. So I've seen some interesting videos and stuff where the government's jumping in because the results are so tangible.
Well, that's the thing. Rahendra had 377 legal cases against him from the government.
Yeah.
Then eventually someone came out, saw it, and okay, this is what we should be doing. We're not going to throw you in jail. Yeah. Let's start helping you now.
And what he said in his talk too, he was like, people need to see it. And he's talking about the people that he works with, which are villagers and people that are farmers. He's like, you can explain, whatever you want, you can explain, but if people can see it, and I think, I feel like that's where your work is really important because you're showing it in the ground. A lot of the work I'm doing these days, I mean, like I'm not installing large scale water systems, but a lot of what I'm doing is like sharing the work of others.
Well, and it's so important. It's like it's these different steps along the journey.
Yeah.
People first have to become aware of the concepts, open to the ideas, and then what can really sink it in is to experience a site where this has been done. Yeah. I know going to some of these places, going to Sepp's farm, going to Tamara, you see these landscapes where it's just an oasis of life and a barren desert all around, and you just can't help but I think be convinced at that point. I think any human being, even if you don't think about it, there's just something that you feel when you reach that kind of regenerated, revitalized landscape.
And it's interesting, one thing I want to just mention about I didn't see Rahendra's work in Rajasthan, but I saw some really large-scale other work by like Gravis Jodhpur, for instance. And I was there in January, which is the dry season, yet the fields were green. The fields were green because every field we saw was green solely for the reason that they were able to grow a crop from the water that they had banked during the monsoon with their water harvesting structures into the aquifer, and they were able to then pull that water out and irrigate. And they said previously they only would plant during the monsoon. They would have one cropping period a year, and if the monsoon failed, literally people would leave. They would go to Delhi or to Mumbai, they'd have to migrate to the cities and they'd become displaced and they literally would abandon their land. So the hydrologic improvement where now they have enough water to grow 2 crops, like to understand that is actually now stabilizing a whole culture where people can get through a failed monsoon and not have to basically migrate.
Absolutely, and they're leaving their home, their land, they're moving on to these very hard existences in the cities, a very hard life. Yeah. And you bring the water, they went from 2% vegetation to 48% vegetation. Yeah. God, that they lowered the average temperature 2 degrees. Now it doesn't get as hot as it used to. Yeah.
And at that scale, you're actually like literally changing climate systems. We've talked a lot about this actually. And I've learned a lot about you from this. About the effects of trees on precipitation, the effects of vegetation, and when we start to think at scale that like Rahendra's doing, the thing for me that has been complex and sort of a conundrum is how do you take the social environment in say India where you could get thousands of people coming together and doing common works that cross over property boundaries and village boundaries and cross into the watershed scale land management. Yep. How do you translate, and they have Gandhi. I mean, Gandhiism and like the power of the people to get together and accomplish things there is just something that's like absolutely a tangible part of their culture. How do you translate that to our grid of property ownership.
Of separation, of our culture is so very different.
And the American dream
Yeah.
of each person, your
Yeah.
family,
On your
own.
absolutely.
Which is
no
kinda-
shared commons, no shared, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think something that was so important to that process is that they created these water councils, and that they have a representative from every family, and they have a male and female representative from each village at the different levels of these. And I think this is a model that we could start to work with, that if people start organizing within towns, within watersheds, and really start becoming concerned,
Yeah.
then we can start to build some energy
Yeah.
and create some movement.
Yeah.
Because people are always looking for community. I think
Yeah.
is one of the big things. We're always looking for connection. And if we can make it a fun experience of community, we're going to get a lot more people on board.
Yeah, we do have like a fundamental patterned flaw. And I don't know, like just the fact that the grid of property ownership is overlaid over the watershed, and even though you can have this many people getting together over here, if
Yeah.
this person
Yeah.
up here in the upper watershed
Is of a- yeah.
wants to deforest their area,
Yeah.
there's no legal repercussions.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get over that. Like I think that is the fundamental flaw of human civilization, is superimposing a grid
Yeah.
over the watershed.
Over a non-gridded landscape, really. And it's amazing how many times you see property lines that are the water line. And so it basically makes it impossible for either member to do anything without cooperation between each other. And then it gets into this very hard legal thing where if one property sells, and
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my main conundrum when I'm teaching is like I'm honestly perplexed at how to, well, and I was less perplexed before going to India and then seeing watershed scale, like the whole village,
Yeah.
they did the whole watershed, and
Yeah.
it's all interconnected, and the overflow from their water collection systems goes several kilometers to the next village,
Yeah.
and a chain of interconnected villages and their water harvesting systems, and you're just like, yes! And you get back here and you're like, oh, because then you're like, okay, the government could do it, but then we have so much like anti-government, don't you tell me what to do, and as soon as the government starts to like, we need like a Clean Water Act,
Yeah.
we need clean air, people are like, don't tell me what I can do with my air and my water, you know, it's just like,
Well, and government-run projects are so inefficient, so
Yeah.
ineffective. If
Yeah.
we leave it in their hands, it's going to be too late. It's going to be so slow and
Yeah.
ineffective. It's not going to reach
Yeah.
the goal. One concept I really like is if we turn to the Department of Transportation into the Department of Transportation and Water Retention.
yeah.
We could increase the cost of these road projects like 10%, very minimally,
Yeah.
maybe less than 10%. They already have all the equipment, they already have the labor, they already have the land, the easements.
Yeah.
We could, and the roads are one of the main things causing damage.
Yeah.
If we started to just offset the impacts of roads as we built them, as we repaired them,
Yeah.
I think it would be one way we could start to work within the current grid.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's actually a really good leverage point.
Yeah.
Is if like the Oregon Department of Transportation was really keen on hydrology
Yeah.
and the overall landscape hydrology,
Yeah.
that would be, yeah, because the roadways actually, I mean, they are oftentimes the property divisions, and they
Uh-huh.
are oftentimes placed dysfunctionally,
Yeah.
but they are essentially they're essentially like the veins that we have overlain over
Yeah.
the grid.
The veins of drains.
The veins and drains, exactly. The veins of drains, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what are the lessons you're taking away from here, Andrew?
One thing is I've just had a lot of time to like talk to friends of mine that I already have, so that's
Yeah.
nice. Just like
Yep.
a lot of times these conferences, when I kind of come back, a lot of times the thing that stands out, if you ask me like 2 weeks from now, like, oh, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to hang out with Zach,
Yeah.
and I got to hang out with Abel, and I got to
Yeah.
connect with Dan, and saw Hannah, and
Yeah.
like people that I'm like just get to have that time with. And then meeting new people as well and making connections and hearing, like Rahendra was certainly a highlight for
Yeah,
me. I was just
yeah.
sitting there listening to these guys who do like these native guys who do horse training, traditional horse training.
Okay, wow.
And you're just like, wow, you know, to have that kind of level of tradition
Yeah.
brought here
Yep.
and have this kind of, I would say like, I would say the intercultural collaboration and how this conference brought together people from a lot of native people,
Yep.
a lot of people from different countries. A
Yep.
lot of effort was put out to actually have cross-cultural,
Yep.
cross-pollination. And
That's huge.
Yeah.
And we got to give a big up to Michael Pilarski for
know.
making that I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
this is honestly, in terms of representation of the conferences that I've been at,
Yep.
this is by far the most diverse and the most inclusive, where it's really welcoming of other cultures, of other perspectives, and it's
Yep.
this beautiful melting pot of all the people that are concerned and care about the earth.
Yeah. I've been to some crazy festivals in my youth. I remember the World Unity Festival, which was in 1994.
Yep.
And it was like the craziest conglomeration of different cultures. The guy who put the whole thing on, like, it was almost like a faux festival. He didn't actually have any of the details worked out. And so thousands and thousands of people showed up to northern Arizona, and there was like nothing, but like so many people were rainbow family, that people started throwing kitchens together and found this site and the whole thing. And like Bob, he had all these people booked, they all canceled. The only one who didn't cancel, of course, was, well, here's a quiz, Babatunde Olatunji. Babatunde Olatunji, do you know him? He's a West African drummer. I think he passed away. Anyways, he's blind. So he was the only big performer that showed up because he couldn't see how chaotic this thing was. You know what I mean? I was like, right, of course Babatunde came. This all looks fine to him. He's blind, But anyways, that's like the only festival I can go back where I was like, wow, there was this real integration of
Well, and to have something like this where it's so focused and so much information, so much skill and knowledge here, it's like in many ways we have the leaders of the coming world here, all intermingling, starting to create connections, and I'm really excited of what all comes of it.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Nice.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us here, and we look forward to sharing more with you.